My wife divorced me for being too fat. I said nothing, just worked hard. Then 9 months later, she was crying in regret after seeing me on live TV. She didn't hesitate. Her voice was sharp, empty of warmth, and her eyes didn't flinch when she said it. I'm not attracted to you anymore. You've let yourself go. I deserve better. There was no discussion, no attempt at grace or tact, just the final sentence that hit harder than anything else ever had. I stood in the doorway of our shared home. Well, what used to be our shared home, and watched her walk out. Papers signed, bags already packed. She had someone waiting. She'd been planning this, not just for days, but for weeks, maybe longer. Her exit was smooth, practiced. I didn't chase after her, didn't plead or argue. I stood there in silence, staring at the dent her absence left in the room, the echo of her last words repeating in my mind like a drumbeat. She was done, and she made sure I knew that I wasn't worth waiting for, changing for, or even staying for. She didn't cry. I did, but only after the door closed and I was alone with it all. I didn't eat that night. Not because I was suddenly motivated, but because the weight in my chest made breathing feel like a chore. Sleep didn't come either. I stared at the ceiling, remembering every meal I'd eaten in isolation, every time she'd looked away when I undressed. Every night, she chose her phone over conversation. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. The next morning, before the sun even broke the sky, I tied on a pair of old sneakers that hadn't seen daylight in years. The laces were frayed, the soles cracked, but they still held together. I walked first, then jogged. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept going. Every step brought back her voice, cold, certain, final. I ran with that sound in my ears, that image of her walking away in my mind. I didn't post about it, didn't tell friends. I went quiet. Each day began before sunrise and ended with me collapsing on the floor, sweat dripping, heart racing, body aching. Meals were small, clean, calculated. I drank water like it was medicine, cut out distractions, stopped scrolling, stopped explaining. I just worked, quietly, consistently. 3 months in, I saw the first difference. Not just in the mirror, but in how I stood. Straighter, firmer. The dark circles under my eyes had faded. I wasn't smiling, but I didn't feel broken anymore either. I bought new clothes, nothing flashy, just ones that fit. Shirts that didn't hang like curtains. Pants that didn't dig into my waist. I walked through stores now without tugging at my sleeves. I started to be noticed, not for my size, but for the shift in presence. My coworkers asked questions. I didn't give answers. I owed no one an explanation. Half a year in, a producer reached out through an old acquaintance. A national show wanted to run a feature on personal transformations. Not just weight loss, but life rebuilds. Discipline. Change. They asked if I'd be willing to share my story. I hesitated at first, then I said yes. Not for revenge. Not for her. But because I knew what it took to drag myself out of that dark place. And maybe someone else needed to hear that it could be done without applause, without pity, without shortcuts. 9 months to the day since she left, I stood under bright studio lights, wearing a tailored suit that held no trace of who I used to be. I spoke clearly, calmly, outlining what I'd done, how I'd changed. I didn't mention her by name. Didn't need to. The cameras rolled. The host smiled. The segment aired live across the country. And then my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I almost didn't recognize it at first. The call came 3 minutes after the interview ended. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail later. She was crying, voice shaking, saying she saw me, saying she missed me, saying she didn't know what she had until it was gone, saying she made a mistake. I didn't return her call. Not after the voicemail. Not after the second message. Not even after she tried to follow up with a long email filled with half-baked apologies and hollow confessions. It came with the same recycled words everyone uses when they realize they bet against the wrong version of someone. I didn't know. I was hurting too. You've changed so much. She tried to frame it like we had simply grown apart, as if she hadn't thrown everything away the second things got uncomfortable for her. I didn't respond because there was no point. She wasn't reaching out to reconnect. She was reaching out because she saw the reaction to my story, because the comments were pouring in, the video of my segment was trending, and strangers were calling me an example of grit. I saw the articles being shared. From rejected to rebuilt. A man transforms in silence after divorce. Headlines full of drama. None of them mentioned her name, but everyone knew the role she played. And that's what stung her. She hadn't expected it. The silence. The focus. The fact that I didn't break, didn't spiral, didn't post cryptic updates or try to win her back. She expected me to stay where she left me. On the couch, in the kitchen, standing at the door with my gut hanging over the top of my pants. She never thought I'd climb out without her noticing. And now she couldn't stop noticing. The calls kept coming for a week. Then they turned into text messages. Long ones, short ones, voice memos, even photos. None of it mattered. I didn't block her. I didn't need to. She wasn't in control anymore. And I wasn't angry. Not in the way she probably hoped. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her back. I wanted to move forward without pretending she didn't try to bury me. That week, I met with a fitness brand executive. They'd seen my interview and asked if I'd be willing to endorse a line of activewear focused on real transformation stories, ordinary people doing extraordinary things without filters or false promises. I said yes, but under one condition. No exaggeration, no inflated numbers, no fake before and after setups. They agreed. I wasn't trying to be famous. I just didn't want to be forgotten. Not by the world, by myself. My mornings hadn't changed. I still woke before sunrise. Still ran. Still trained. Still ate clean, simple meals. But something else had shifted. Now people watched, asked questions, recorded, offered compliments. I didn't take them as praise. I took them as reminders. I hadn't reached a finish line. I'd just stepped onto a new one. One night, around 10, I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize. Said she'd seen my interview and wanted to thank me for sharing my story. Her brother had been struggling with depression and had started walking again after watching the segment. That message hit differently. It wasn't about me. It was about someone else finding their way because I had kept walking. I started getting more of those. Some from teenagers who felt invisible. Some from men who hadn't looked in a mirror in months. Others from women who had been told they weren't enough. Each message felt personal, not because they admired me, but because they saw something of themselves in the silence I had chosen. The work, the discomfort, the decision to keep going when no one clapped. My phone buzzed again. It was her. This time, just a single line. "Can we talk?" I stared at it. I didn't delete it, didn't respond. I just let it sit there like a reminder of what she said, of what she did, of who she chose to be the moment things got hard. She hadn't tried to help. She didn't stay to support me. She judged. She ran. She looked for someone better. Now she was looking again, but from the wrong side of the screen. 2 months after the interview aired, I was invited to a national fitness conference. Not as an attendee, but as a guest speaker. They wanted me to open the event with my story. I almost turned it down. Talking into a camera in a quiet studio was one thing. Standing in front of thousands, opening old wounds, was another. But I said yes. Not because I wanted applause. Not because I thought I was special. But because I had learned something in the silence about pain, about discipline, about identity, and I wanted others to know it too. The night before the event, I reviewed my speech. Not scripted, just outlined. Key moments, turning points, the days she left, the decision to run, the early mornings, the missed calls, the moment I realized her opinion no longer had weight in my life. I wasn't speaking to shame her. I wasn't speaking to prove her wrong. I was speaking to the people sitting in the crowd who were still stuck where I used to be. The next morning, I stepped onto the stage. The lights were hot. The room was packed. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't shaking. I didn't even sweat. I just spoke. Calm, direct, without fluff. I told them everything. Not just about her leaving, but about what I did afterward. The silence I chose. The pain I turned into fuel. the discipline I built from the ashes of rejection. I told them that you don't win by getting back at the ones who left. You win by becoming the person you were too scared to be when they were still watching. The room was quiet the whole time. Then, when I stepped off stage, people stood up. Some clapped. Some just watched. And one man, maybe in his 50s, walked up and said, "You didn't just lose weight. You dropped the version of yourself that let people treat you like you didn't matter." He was right. That night, when I got back to the hotel, she had sent another message. "I'm proud of you. I see it now." But she didn't see it then. She saw someone who made her uncomfortable. Someone who didn't fit the picture she wanted to paint for the world. Someone she didn't want to wait for. I read it once, closed the app, then turned off the phone. I didn't need her to see me. I saw myself. That was enough. The next week, a small publication released a follow-up article on my story. Not focused on the physical side this time, but the mental shift. They asked deeper questions. What changed internally? What stayed the same? I told them I still had hard days. Still battled self-doubt. Still had to fight the urge to quit sometimes. But now, I didn't let that voice win. I didn't villainize her in the interview. I didn't make her the center of the story. I didn't mention her by name once. Because she wasn't the story. Not anymore. She was just the spark. The fire came after. A few days later, I found out she had moved out of state. Word got around through mutual contacts. She and the man she'd left me for had split. No surprise. It didn't matter to me. I didn't feel anything when I heard it. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just indifference. That chapter was closed. I wasn't flipping back. Around the same time, a local school invited me to speak to a group of teenagers about resilience and self-worth. That meant more than the conferences. These weren't professionals. They weren't polished. They weren't waiting to applaud. They were just trying to survive the chaos of their own lives. I went. I stood in that gym with the cracked bleachers and flickering lights and told them the truth. That sometimes people leave. Sometimes they say cruel things. Sometimes they don't wait for you to get better. And that's okay, because it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you are always capable, just hidden under the noise. One girl came up after and whispered, "My dad left me because I wasn't the daughter he wanted." I told her without blinking, "That says everything about him, nothing about you." She nodded, didn't cry, just nodded. The next year passed quickly, not in a blur, but in a steady march of focused days, each one adding a little more distance between the man I used to be and the man I had become. No shortcuts, no dramatic setbacks, just discipline, structure, quiet confidence that grew not from success, but from knowing I could rely on myself without needing approval or validation. After the speaking engagement slowed, I took a step back from the spotlight, not because I feared losing relevance, but because I had never chased attention in the first place. The interviews, the applause, the headlines, they came and went. What stayed were the mornings where I still laced up my shoes before the world woke, and the nights I went to sleep knowing I hadn't wasted a single hour on things or people that no longer mattered. She still texted. Not often anymore. Maybe once every few weeks. Just enough to stay on the edge of my attention, like a shadow that didn't know it had already faded. Her messages were softer now, more regretful. "I miss our conversations. I didn't know how much you meant to me until it was too late. I'm really happy for you." She never directly asked for another chance, but the meaning was always just beneath the surface. I never responded. There wasn't anger behind my silence. Just finality. I wasn't avoiding her. I was done. One afternoon, I passed by the cafe where we'd gone on our first date. I didn't go in. I didn't even stop walking. I just noted the place and kept moving. That was the moment I realized nothing tied me to the past anymore. I remembered the old moments like photos in a drawer. I could look at them without flinching, but I had no reason to put them back on display. 6 months after my last public talk, I joined a small fitness center as a private coach. I didn't advertise it. I didn't post about it online. It was a quiet role, one-on-one work with people trying to get their footing back. Not celebrities. Not social media stars. Just regular folks who needed someone who understood what it felt like to be broken down without pity. My first client was a man in his late 40s, divorced, overweight, distant from his kids. He didn't need a perfect trainer. He needed someone who wouldn't talk down to him, who wouldn't make him feel like a problem. I never gave him speeches, just gave him structure. Showed up, watched him struggle, saw him fight through it. One day, after a session, he said, "You don't talk much about your past." I told him, because it's not my future. And it wasn't. I wasn't carrying her words anymore. Wasn't dragging the memory of being told I wasn't enough. That weight was gone. Not just from my body, but from my mind. The real transformation wasn't physical. It was in how I responded to loss. I stopped trying to prove anything to people who made their decision and walked away. I didn't need to punish her or forgive her. I just needed to outgrow the version of myself who once believed her opinion defined me. A year and a half after she left, I saw her in person again. Not planned. I had just left the gym, grabbing a drink from a small market down the block. She walked in, same hurried stride, same expression that used to tell me when she'd had a bad day. She didn't notice me at first. Then her eyes locked onto mine. She froze. I didn't smile, didn't frown. I simply nodded once, calmly, then turned and walked out. That was all I needed. No confrontación. No questions. No performance. Just presence. I had become someone who didn't need to engage with the past in order to walk into the future. Later that week, she messaged again. "I saw you. I didn't know what to say. You looked different. Not just physically. I know you've moved on, but I still think about you. About us. I know I hurt you. I was selfish. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." It was the first time she ever used the word sorry. And even then, I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to rebuild. The version of me she had abandoned no longer existed, and the one I'd become owed her nothing. One night, sitting on my porch as the sky dimmed, I thought about the early days, the pain, the silence, the countless hours where I didn't know if I'd ever feel whole again. I thought about the first mile I ran, the first full push-up I could do, the first night I slept without waking from anger. I had built a new life brick by brick, with effort, not emotion, with work, not revenge. And I wasn't bitter. I was thankful, not because she was right to leave, but because her absence forced me to stop waiting for someone else to validate my worth. Eventually, I met someone new, not a rebound, not a replacement. She didn't care about my past story or the media features. She didn't ask about the divorce, and I didn't bring it up. What mattered to her was the man sitting across from her now, the one who listened without judgment, who made commitments and followed through, who carried himself like someone who had nothing to prove. With her, I wasn't trying to outrun the past. I wasn't trying to impress or redeem. I was just present, honest, grounded. It was easy, not in the way that meant effortless, but in the way that meant right. Years passed. The story of my transformation faded from public view, as stories do. New faces took the spotlight. Trends changed. Articles disappeared. But my life continued, steady, real, fulfilling. I never became a celebrity, never launched a brand, never tried to stay relevant, because I wasn't doing it for attention. I was doing it to reclaim ownership over a life that had once slipped out of my hands. In the end, the version of me that stood on live television wasn't the final form. This was. The man who woke up each day not needing closure from the people who left. The man who stopped measuring himself by who stayed or who regretted walking away. The man who had nothing left to prove because he had already become everything he needed.